Some of you may already know Bill Corcoran. Sadly, he passed away back in 2018, but he was one of the early presenters and supporters of the HPRCT conference that was the predecessor of CHOL, and he was always known. And I got his Firebird Forum newsletter on a routine basis, and he was known for saying this quote: "Things are the way they are because managers want them that way, or managers tolerate them that way, or managers are unaware of them." And that was a common refrain in his newsletter. But I want to add a fourth item to this. And fundamentally, it might be already stated in some ways in what he's already said. But I believe that managers do not fully understand how their organizations work. And that's what systems thinking brings to the table, is to help managers understand human performance in a complex environment. And when you add human beings to a system, you immediately create a complex environment. I want to, before we continue and define the idea of systems and systems thinking, I want to compare linear thinking with systems thinking. And linear thinking is illustrated in the traditional thinking: A causes B, and then B causes C, and then C causes D. That's the traditional cause and effect. And what tends to drive this is because of the human constraint called bounded rationality. The human mind can only hold so much information at one time, and so we have a tendency to overly simplify cause and effect. You could say that linear thinking, or the traditional approach to cause and effect, is fast thinking, whereas system thinking is going to be what I refer to as uh, uh, slow thinking. Systems thinking looks at the interaction of not only cause and effect, A causes B, but sometimes B can have an influence on A. All right. And systems thinking considers the environment in which performance is happening. And we commonly refer to a VUCA environment. There's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in the workplace. And there's hidden interactions between parts of the system. There's feedback that's occurring that we don't see. There's delays in feedback. And so systems thinking looks at performance from multiple perspectives. And again, this can sometimes slow down the analysis, and that's why I refer to systems thinking as slow thinking. As an example, now this is a 1953 DeSoto sedan. This was my first car when I turned uh, back somewhere in the 1960s. All right, this was my grandmother's car. And what's unique about it, it was the first vehicle that had an automatic transmission, but this had a transmission that had a clutch. So you had a clutch in order to change the transmission from park to drive. Once you got it in drive, then you can step on the accelerator and drive away. But the question is, what's an automobile system? And here are the essential parts. You got an engine, you have a chassis, you have wheels, you need brakes and steering. And without the operator, it still just sits there. And so the idea is to transport the operator or the or the people in the car from one point to another. That's the purpose. And what's interesting is they all interact. These parts are interacting. And if you take one of the parts away, that vehicle cannot perform its function. even the operator, you take that operator where, you know, the vehicle cannot perform its function of transporting one place to another place. And and it's interesting that the parts cannot do what the system does. The wheels by themselves cannot transport people from one place to another place. The engine by itself cannot transport people from one place to another place. So the challenge is to understand the performance. To understand performance, we have to look at the whole. You have to look at the whole look at performance in context. And so that's going to be one of the key learnings going forward, is to understand that, yeah, we have to resist the temptation to take the operator out of the system to understand performance. We need to understand performance within context. First, what is a system? A set of parts assembled and fitted together, which I'm going to refer to as structure, to accomplish a desired purpose or function. And whenever I use the word function, it's usually equipment related, technology related, and purpose is usually has a social context or element to it. So that's what we mean by system. What do we mean by learning? And you'll notice the photo there of Donella Meadows, and I'm a big fan of her work. She wrote a book called Thinking in Systems, and I have that footnoted there, so you can refer to that later. But she says that learning is the acquisition of information that prompts a change in behavior of the system by realigning its structure towards a desired purpose. Notice the linkage there with the definition of system. And she says what we're trying to do is make success more likely, failure less likely, and adaptive capacity more refined. So if we put these two concepts together, fundamentally, I believe systems learning is the effective application of new knowledge through discovery into a system structure. And we have to understand what that structure looks like before we can actually learn, so that we can enhance the capacity to accomplish the system's purpose and avoid unwanted outcomes. In other words, success. And it's a little more nuanced. It provides a little more information, and it shows the interface between a behavior, the operation, and the assets, the work output, because this shows the business relationship. Those assets, or rather the work outputs, are ultimately delivered to customers in the business environment. And I'm a believer, you know, frontline workers need to understand how their work influencers are actually interfaces with the business of the organization. So they need to understand that just as well. They need to understand safety. Okay, and the down arrows also represent connections. There's multiple, and this is just for illustration purposes, but there's more than 6 interfaces between organization and local factors. Fundamentally, managers don't manage behavior and safety and culture directly there at the sharp end. What they actually influence, what they actually manipulate, are the local factors, the conditions people work in. So fundamentally, the structure of the system are the top 2, organizational factors and the local factors. That's what I'm going to refer to as structure. Now let's look at learning itself. You know, when we talk about learning, it's, you know, the idea here is we want to make some adjustments to the structure. Notice over to the right, you'll see the word structure, and it's alluding to organizational factors and local factors. All right, so we want to make some alignment, realignment of those in order to get the business results that we want. Now notice uh, um, alignment, we want to align the organization to get the business results. And we have to work through local factors to influence people's behavior choices and actions when they do work. And when people do work, they accomplish work outputs. These are the things that are left over when the work is done. All right, this is the value that was created after the work was done. And that value is delivered to the customer, and that's the business result. Now notice the subscripts R1, W1, B1, L1, O1. Okay, that's the initial. What if that's not what you want? We want a new business result, so that's an R2. Well, you can't just go back directly to organizational factors. You have to work yourself uh, uh, back through from bottom to top in order to realign the system. So you have to work backwards. And so, what new work outputs do we need to achieve the new business result? And that may require, likely will require, a new set of choices, a new set of behaviors and actions. That would be the new B2. Well, what are the new local factors that are necessary to accomplish those behaviors? Again, structure drives behavior. So we have to know what the new behavior is before we can design the new structure, local factors and organizational factors. So it goes that way. It doesn't just simply go from 5 back up to 1. We have to work our way back through the system. And I emphasize that organizations are perfectly tuned to get the results that they are getting. Now, I mean, this principle has been around for probably over a century now, and it's still true today. That fundamentally what we're doing with systems learning is retuning the system to get. You could say we want to be less wrong. It's one way of saying we want to be less wrong. We're constantly monitoring our system. We're constantly readjusting the system. In fact, this is what Alcoa Aluminum did. I think it was Paul O'Neill, the chief executive officer, who put the focus on safety, and he basically said we're going to focus on learning and creating a more nuanced approach to how we do business. We know we're not going to give you a perfect system, but we're going to learn and readjust the system to be less wrong, so to speak.